Okay, this is Module 4, Lesson 3. I'm going to do now the first one here on the homework is more of an example. I know it's a lot to take in just looking at it, so once you do it step by step, it becomes much easier. Now, the first couple here, it looks like they've got different fractions, but this is all really the same fraction. The actual fraction is here. We're dealing, in this case, with improper fractions in every single one. Here it's 4 divided by 3. Let's go down here. This one is 7 divided by 2. So let's write that in. And then that's the best start we can have. 7 divided by 2. So 7 halves divided by 2. Or rather, 14 halves. Because when we're talking a half, this is a half because it would be on the bottom. The fraction would look like 7 over 2. And then you can see a little bit more clearly that 7 halves. Half is another way of saying over 2, so, or divided by 2. So 14 halves divided by 2 means there's 7. So 7 halves. Now if we go over here to this column is for mixed number. Before I just write the mixed number in, let's figure out how would you solve it. Well, with an improper fraction, how many 2's go into 7? Because what we're thinking about here is 2 over 2 equals 1. The 2 is on the bottom because we're dealing with halves here. Now, if there's 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom, that's always 1. So how many of these 1 representations are in here? Well, 2, and then we have another 2 over 2. That's 4. That's 6, and then there's 1 left over. So 1, 2, 3, and then there's another half that's just left over. You're kind of adding these all together. 3 and a half. In other words, the improper fraction is, what is 7 divided by 2? It's 3 and a half. So if we look at how many 2's go into 7, let's zoom in a little bit here and focus just on the division. How many 2's go into 7? 2, 4, 6. There's 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Now that's just regular long division. It's pretty easy. Subtract, you get 1. Now 2 can't go into 1. There's nothing to bring down. So 1 is the remainder. So 3 is the answer since we're dealing with an improper fraction, we're not going to leave it as a decimal like you could add a 0.0 here and bring the 0 down, but we're with fractions. So when you do it with fractions, you do have the remainder. It's actually easier than decimals because you just put the 1, the remainder's there, but now it's a fraction. 1 over what then? That's the question, right? We're dealing with halves. So divide by 2. Because remember, it's what it looked like over here, 7 divided by 2. We're dealing with halves. So the denominator, sorry, that was my magnet. It just fell off its base. Yeah, I have a levitating magnet on my desk here. Don't worry, I'll fix it. It takes 2 seconds. Division, 7 divided by 2. So this is the denominator. Then it's going to be the same denominator here, 2 halves. So it's 3 and an extra half left over. Now if you'll notice, this answer and this answer are exactly the same. Because if we scroll up, the mixed number is also the standard algorithm, which is just a fancy way of saying solve it with long division in this case, and then check it. and fractional units, then check. This looks like a lot of difficult stuff, but I'm going to break it down to make it very, very simple, hopefully. Although nobody's perfect, so if you don't get it, I don't know, rewatch the video. This is hard, though. This is something that most children have not seen unless they've done a lot of the Common Core, which nobody's done yet. So at this point, anyway, it is very new, and this is how you solve it. Once you see it, I think it'll make sense. If you look at this example, all they did is they started with multiplication, and then they showed multiplication as just repeated addition. So 3 times 1 1/3. So they're checking. So you always check your answer in long division by taking your answer and just multiplying by here. So in this case, 1 times 3 to check it, and it should equal this guy, 4. And if they did the math, and of course it did right here. So let's check it. So in this case, it's 3.5 times 2. 3.5 times 2. Now 3.5 times 2 is the same thing as 3.5 plus 3.5, because there's 2 of them. Times 2 means there's 2 3.5. So 3.5 plus 3.5. And if you just add the whole numbers first and then the fractions. 3 and 3 is 7. And then 1/2 and 1/2 is easy. You don't even have to do the math. 1/2 plus 1/2 is 2 halves, or a whole. If you did want to add them, the denominators are the same, 2, so you add the tops. 1 plus 1 is 2. So you'd have 2 halves. And of course, same on the top and bottom is 1. 2 over 2 is 1, so the answer, hold on, 1. And, oh, you know what? I made a silly mistake. That happens to everyone. Rather than go and redo this entire video, I think some of you watching this notice that even Mr. Zeger makes a mistake. They're rare, but they do happen. But I always find them. Let's see, 3 plus 3. Oh my goodness, that is ridiculous. How did I make that mistake? 3 plus 3 is 6. I learned that in like kindergarten. Oh boy, I must be tired. Anyways, 3 plus 3 is 6. 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1 whole, or 2 over 2. So if you turn that, that's 2 over 2 is equal to 1. 6 plus 1 equals 7. There we go. So 7. Now 7, what does that mean, 7? 7 is what we were originally starting with here, 7. If we get rid of that, 7, so it should have checked, and it did. And if you look over here, it was 7 divided by 2, or 7 divided by 2. And there you go. If you compare how I did mine with how this one was done, because it has every single section checked in, and go step by step, you'll get the process. And the repeated addition looks a little longer here because they did 4 divided by 3, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do the math, it's 1 and remainder 1 over 3, because we're dealing with thirds, so it has to be divided by 3. And of course, these are the same, see? And, well, what does that mean? It means that there's 3 times 1 over 3. So when you do the check, 1 1/3 times 3, 1 1/3 times 3, which means there's 3 of these guys, 3 of them. 1 1/3, 1 1/3, 1 1/3. And if you add them up, 1, 2, 3, bam, it's that one. And 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 is 3/3, which is the same as 1. And if you add it to 3, you get 4. Check. All right. Have a good rest of your evening, night, morning, whatever it may be. Bye-bye.